Welcome to Lippitt House, everyone. We are so glad you are here. So I'm so pleased to see people that we know from so many parts of our work and so many parts of our lives. And we have and our really wonderful League of Women Voter partners who were instrumental. I have to begin this before I do my formal introduction to give a shout out to Joan Ritsinas for the fire in her belly that said, we need to do this now, and she made it happen, and we are so glad to be here. We've partnered with the League for many, many years. So I hope you've enjoyed being in this beautiful space in this drawing room. Lippitt House was the home of Henry and Mary Ann Lippitt. The Lippitt family was very civically engaged over the years, and we try to honor their legacy of public service through community conversations and programs like these. We also honor the legacy of 19th century immigration. In the late 1900s, about 64% of the population was either foreign-born or children of foreign-born. And so because of that, we do try to stay current with current immigrants through our civics programming with English language learners and through topical conversations like this. In terms of housekeeping, we do have restrooms back there if you need them. If there's anything else that Jane or I, my associate, can help you with, please let us know. But at this moment, I'm going to turn it over to Liz to just do a brief welcome from the League of Women Voters before we turn it over to yes. That's your cue, Liz.
That's my cue, yes. This is not my favorite thing to do. But anyway, I'd like to welcome you all, and oh yes, there. I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Providence, which many of you, there are a number of members here, but some of you don't know that the League is a nonpartisan organization. We never support candidates or parties, but we work on issues. And immigration is one of our major issues on a national level. So, we will be, anybody who's a League member, and there are a number, actually just raise your hand if you're a League member, because I think, yes, there are a number of you. If you ask them any question, they will be able to help you or direct you someplace. We have a website that's lwv.ri.org, and you can find out more about the League on the website. With that, I will turn it back over to Joan, and she will lead the conversation.
Great, thank you. And thank everyone for being here. On the one hand, it seemed difficult to stage something weeks before the new year, days before Christmas, but at a time when many of us will be greeting the new year with excitement, Happy New Year, and hopes. According to artificial intelligence, which is often wrong, there are 30,000 people in Rhode Island who have no documentation. 8,000 are parents of a child born here, and they're not so excited about the new year. So we thought we should hear from people whose constituents and clients are some of these 32,000 people, and about their organizations. So shall we start with each panelist will speak for 7 minutes, and then we have questions, and it's supposed to be a conversation where you ask them, they ask you, free for all. So why don't we start with my right with Mario Bueno, who has been with Progreso Latino for decades.
Oh, I have my own. You're very welcome. Hi everyone, good evening, and thank you for being here tonight to talk about this important issue, and thank you, Joe, for organizing this. And I want to recognize Dr. Capinelli, who is here, who was on our board for a number of years at Progreso Latino. Progreso Latino is in Central Falls. We serve predominantly the Blackstone Valley. We're a community organization. We were founded by immigrant activists who wanted a voice in the community. And we have immigration program that was founded partly because of Dorcas International. They helped us to become recognized, so we're DOJ recognized. Unfortunately, the director of our immigration program couldn't be here tonight. She's on vacation. So I'm not a legal expert, but I can speak in terms of what we've done in the past and what we plan on doing. We work in collaboration. We're part of the Immigration Coalition, which Dorcas also had a hand in. And in terms of what's happening right now in our periphery, what's happening is what Joan talked about. There's going to be a change in administration. There may be a different focus in terms of immigration policy. And so the community, our community that we work with is concerned about these issues, very concerned. We have blended families with undocumented, documented, and citizen in the family. And in terms of public announcements and pronouncements from the incoming administration, they're talking about, well, the whole family will be removed. And so these things that have been discussed are really concerning for us. We're an organization that advocates for immigrants. They're part of the fabric of our country that we live in, and we're concerned about these issues. In 2015, 2016, around there, Sarah Friedman, the director of the learning community in Central Falls, organized a group of us, including myself, but a group of pro bono attorneys, and they developed preparedness packages for families that are here, so that they can be prepared. And Joan asked, how can you all help? Well, you can be part of the work that we're doing, get involved with the coalition and with organizations such as ours. And you can help with education. You can help with discussing these issues, advocating on behalf of immigrant families in the community. And what we've been talking about is not reinventing the wheel, but rather learning from what we've done in the past and reinstituting those practices. So one of them is a meeting with a family so that they can be prepared, and that would mean thinking about, well, what will happen to the kids? What should we do legally? Those kinds of things. And we plan on going to different community centers. There was just a presentation, I believe it was last week, right? At PCTA, at the high school, that was delivered by the Immigration Coalition, or the Immigrant Coalition. And so we plan on working with delivering public education amongst the community, working with our municipal and state government. I have spoken with a couple of municipal leaders, and they want to work with us in terms of ensuring that the policies that we've invoked or worked for here in the state will continue to stronghold. And we plan on having a legal clinic at Progreso Latino at least monthly for families that have questions, and I'm sure probably Dorcas is probably thinking about, in the same vein, doing the same. So these are some of the things, and I just spoke to Dr. Campinelli. And there are churches that are stepping up to be sanctuary churches for the families that we're talking about. And those are discussions that we hope to engage in, and we want to help as much as possible, whether it's a donation, helping a family in need, and being present and standing up for the rights of these families when the time comes. So I'm going to pass this over.
Okay. Cecily from Dorcas International.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Cecily Ziegler, and I'm a staff attorney at Dorcas International Institute. as I don't know how many people know, Dorcas International, we're a multi-service agency in Rhode Island. We have 2 different buildings on Elmwood Avenue. We're the primary refugee resettlement agency for the state of Rhode Island. So refugees who are coming into the country primarily get resettled through us, a little bit through the Catholic Diocese, and then we provide education, classes and job readiness, clothing collaborative, things like that, all to support incoming refugees and other people in the community. The other piece of our program is the Citizenship and Immigration Services Program, and my director, Tatiana Almeida, is here also. But we are the Legal Services Department, and so we provide legal services to immigrants and refugees who are in Rhode Island. We do all kinds of cases. We don't do any employment, immigration law. We leave that to the private bar, but we do family petitions and all kinds of humanitarian relief for people. Mario was talking about legal clinics. We are looking, the Immigration Coalition in general is looking to set those up around the state in various places. We also at Dorcas International have consultation hours, so we have walk-in hours every day of the week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings, and Tuesdays and Thursdays afternoons, and we all take turns covering those hours. And anyone can walk in and get a free legal consultation about what their status might be, and if there's anything that we can do to help them. So that, in a nutshell, is what Dorcas International does. And in terms of what is to come a month from now and how we're preparing, one of the hard things that the 3 of us were talking about before this started is that we don't actually know exactly what's going to happen. What we do know is what happened, for sure, is what happened the first time around. There were, a reduction in refugee arrivals. There was a travel ban that happened quite quickly. There was family separation at the border, and then there was the cancellation of a lot of different programs like DACA, temporary protected status, things like that. We assume that he's going to try a lot of those things again, but again, we won't know until January 20th. Other things that he is, that the Trump administration is sort of threatening to do and talking a lot about doing at this point that might be new is canceling a lot of the parole programs. So some of you might know that Venezuelans and Haitians and Afghans and Ukrainians, a lot of people have come in on these temporary programs legally and have been given 2-year statuses of parole. All of that might get canceled. So there's a large number of people that might become undocumented very quickly. And then the last thing, which is the subject of tonight's gathering that is being talked about a lot, is the notion of mass deportations. There was some talk of that in 2016 during the first Trump administration. A lot of it never really played out, but there's a lot more talk about that now. And what does that look like? What does that mean? Again, we don't know exactly yet, but there's likely to be, if this actually happens, a large amount of arrests, especially right after inauguration. And Tom Homan, who's the border czar that has been appointed, is saying that the focus will first be on people in the community who already have orders of deportation against them or have criminal histories. So people in those circumstances are likely more at risk than other people who may just be undocumented, just be in the country with no papers. There aren't enough ICE agents in the United States to get any of that done. So in order to do something massive, the Trump administration would need to do one of 2 things. One is there's something called 287G agreements, which already exist. it's an agreement that the federal government can make with local police departments and sort of deputize them to help and carry out certain immigration enforcement actions. That already exists around the country. I don't believe that there are any local police departments, agencies in Rhode Island that participate in that. That's my understanding to date. So that's one thing they could try to do is get more of those contracts in place to use local law enforcement. The other thing that's been talked about is using the military or the National Guard. If the next administration tries to do that, there will be a lot of lawyers going to court to fight that for sure. So a lot of things that are being talked about in immigration advocates' perspective would violate the law. And so, a lot of what's going to happen in the next several years, I think, is going to be a lot of lawsuits and going to court, which happened the first time around. Was that 1 minute left? Okay. There's so much to talk about, and we're happy to answer any questions. In terms of what people can do to help and what we're doing to prepare, we're doing a lot of Know Your Rights presentations, the family preparedness plans. So we will need volunteers for those kinds of things. There's also housing immigrants and donating goods. There's donating money, obviously. But as things happen, if there are these mass deportation efforts, we're going to sort of know later what specific needs we might have for volunteers to help, to document what's going on in the community, or to help collect bond, things like that. So I'm getting cut off, so I'll stop.
You can say one of them.
No, David, let's hear.
My name is David Molina-Hernández. I work for Fuerza Laboral. We are a non-profit organization based in Central Falls. Our mission is to empower workers by addressing economic and racial injustices through education, training, and organizing. So, unlike Progreso, Latino, or Dorcas, we are more a worker center, a non-profit worker center, but we were funded and we work primarily for the immigrant community and for the Latino community, right? So in that way, we have different programs for people to just better their lives regarding labor. So one of them is education, basic labor rights, technology, etc. Immigrant rights, leadership. Another one is we're trying to end the wage theft, which is a small task, try to end wage theft. I don't know if you know, but the biggest victims of wage theft in the country are undocumented immigrants. We have people come to our offices and they usually have people just don't pay them. And there is not only, born citizens that will not pay them, other immigrants will do as well because they learn the bad tricks from the other people. It's a very difficult subject that we're trying to tackle, but it's necessary because it's one of the things that is hurting immigrant population right now. And we are also working on helping people on create worker-owned cooperatives. So with businesses that are circular instead of triangular, there's less injustice regarding wage theft or discrimination, exploitation, and decision making. So we're trying for the immigrant community to start building businesses that are based on the solidarity economy. So in that way, from the bottom up, we start changing structures. So regarding more of what we're talking about right here, what the immigrant population, especially when they don't have, a legal immigration status, is that there are various structural ways in what they face injustice, right? This is not new and is not something that is now good and is going to change the next year and is going to be bad. It's already bad, right? So that is one thing that we should take into consideration, that we can really do not have to wait until see how things get, we can start working and we can start helping people right now. So one of the ways that we think things are going to change, like both of them have said, will be increased deportations, the end of DACA, immigration restrictions, travel bans, but also, for example, health impact or education impact, which is not letting immigrant children go to school, or like immigrant people get Medicaid or get any services from hospitals, etc., etc. As you said, as we know so far, the police in Rhode Island tries not to collaborate with ICE, as we are a liberal state and we kind of care about our immigrants just a little bit. But that could change with a federal order, right? So for now, there's a lot of uncertainty of what can happen, but what we really have to take into consideration is that the injustice that immigrant people faces is structural, right? The structures are made for immigrant people to always have to be on the lower, on the sub economy and suffer from all of that. Also, plenty of the people that come without legal documentation is people that have very low levels of education, in which when you want to build them up for them to have a better life, cannot only be through legislation, but also has to be through education, and it also has to be through advocacy, right? Dorcas, Fuerza Laboral, I think Progreso Latino as well. We are 501s non-profits. We are 501 non-profit, which means that in order for us to keep the status that we have, we can only do so much political advocacy, right? We cannot be in front of the State House in every legislation and create legislation and pass and befriend all of the senators, etc., etc., etc. I think that's where you come from. I think that's where you can find the power within yourselves and say, well, we are actually citizens. We can actually take as much political action as we want, because as you know as well, the immigrant population without legal documentation cannot also have political action, right? So I will say, if you want to help, if you want to be part, come to us, provide legal assistance, offer financial support. This could be donations, or this could be also getting involved as volunteers. Advocate for policy change, which was what I was telling you. Educate and raise awareness among your peers, among people like, hey, we need to start talking about immigrant people, etc., etc., etc. Support sanctuary policies or people that are doing the change. I will say befriend immigrants, right? Listen to them, listen to their life stories, and also try to give them a voice through your voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, please, questions.
Pardon me, you mentioned protected status, like Haitian people have been here many years with protected status, but you mentioned other ethnic groups as well. Can you repeat some of the ethnic groups who've been here under protected status?
Here, did everybody hear the question?
I can help with the microphone.
Well, here, I'll repeat it, I heard it. She asked whether other groups have been here under protective status.
Like Haitians?
Like Haitians, who else?
Yes, Yes, there's something called temporary protect. Well, there's two different things that we're talking about. One is temporary protected status, and that is something that any administration can do, is to designate people from a certain country in temporary protected status if there's been some kind of crisis or war outbreak or something that happens in that country that would make it difficult for them to go back. So it is not an invitation for more people to come. It's for people who are already here from certain countries. So right now, currently, there are 10, 12 different more countries. But Afghanistan, Ukraine, Venezuela, Haiti,
The old ones.
the
El
old
Salvador,
ones, yeah.
Honduras, Nicaragua,
Liberia.
Lebanon is not redesignated. You have
Right.
Liberia, there's Nepal, it goes on, there's more.
So there are several countries that have had temporary protected status extended and extended and extended for years. There are some newer countries that have had it. Haiti got it with the earthquake back in 2011. And then it gets redesignated. I was also talking about something called parole, which is another type of, which actually is an invitation, a way to get here. So there are certain countries that also have this 2-year parole program.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
My question is regarding logistics. From where I sit, trying to absorb news reports, it just seems massive that there's such a bog of court cases. And when you said there's more and more to come, it seems to me we've never cleared a backlog ever for decades. So what actually happens to people who are caught up in this waiting game? How are they housed? How are they provided resources for income and for food, shelter, and education? Where are these people? What is happening while the courts are so completely bogged up? Because my sense is that there are people coming and coming and coming on a daily basis. And where do they go? What happens to them?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different answers to that question. There is a 3 million case backlog in the immigration court system, but not everybody coming here to the United States on a daily basis is in the court system. People who are put into removal proceedings, those are the people that are bogged down in the court system, and that is very, right now it is so backed up. And what do people do in those situations? A lot of people are with family members, depending on what they've applied for in court. If it's asylum or canceling, various things will give somebody the right to have a work permit. So at least, even though the court case is dragging on and on, many of those people are eligible for work permits, which gets them a social security number, and then that makes it easier to work. But there are also people who are here who are undocumented from the start, have no options, and remain undocumented. They are also working, for decades, for years, and they have found a way to make their life work. Lots of our clients are undocumented and are working at lots of places around the state. But so, in terms of what's to come, if the mass deportation effort and a lot more people are quote unquote, rounded up and put into deportation proceedings, it is going to slow down the system even more. And if the thought is that people are going to be detained, there's no place to put them, that we would need to build more detention centers and things like that. So we don't know, but the system is very backlogged. It will get worse if what is being talked about comes to pass. And in terms of where people are, they're all over.
It could also happen that courts start to get defunded, so it will be less personal to work on giving status, like giving legal status to people. So that could also be a problem. That's why we are talking about different angles, situations when it's not only legal advocacy, but organize and help, like in the different ways that it can be done.
So one of the things that worries me this go around with immigration issue and deportation is that the traditional, probably 1,000-year history of certain places that are sacred in terms of where immigration, ICE could enter, hospitals, schools, churches. Like our church had a sanctuary space where we kept families in 2017, and some of the people here. And the part of that that worries me, the detail that worries me is that if there is a supervisor in one of those spaces and they say it's okay, so I'm thinking about the workplace. I'm thinking about someone who is the jefe, who's running the place and maybe has been threatened with having his whole place demolished or just ruined economically unless he allows people to go through there and start interrogating people or asking for immigration papers and what's the likelihood?
Well, that happens every day, actually. Many workers will hire undocumented workers. They will put the conditions that they want on the workers as they don't have a legal status to work. And then, depending on their motive or their circumstances, they will take different approaches to it. One could be they will threaten people with ICE, right? Or they will threaten people with like, oh, well, I will call immigration if you misbehave, etc., etc., etc. And they put fear in people. And the other one is that when they are having, for example, economic problems, bankruptcy, etc., 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 they will get rid of all of their immigrant workers first. I don't know if that answers your question, or
yeah. Or what kind of legal
What legal options do employers have in terms of protecting their employees?
Yeah, or if they say go ahead and run through the place, then there's nothing the workers could do that are there.
As far as I understand, if there is a rate, there's not much that an employer can do, and workers do have rights, but they can detain. They can detain workers when there is a work rate. We just don't know whether the system has the resources to do that on a large scale. They may be able to pick certain employers, like in certain industries that are, that we know about in the South, where there are a lot of immigrant workers. They may choose certain sectors to raise that. But I don't know how likely it would be here in Rhode Island, but I know that there are states that they would probably target employers.
I just want to add really quickly to that in terms of what a worker, if ICE is coming to an employer, they are allowed to go into the public spaces of a company, but they're not allowed to go into the non-public spaces without a search warrant, federal search warrant signed by a judge. So even if they had arrest warrants for the people inside, they can't enter without either permission from the employer or a federal search warrant. And it's similar at the home for immigrants. They can't come into your home unless they have a search warrant or you invite them in. So a lot of what we're doing in the Know Your Rights is talking to people about what happens if ICE comes to your home or your work. And there are some rights that people have. The Fourth Amendment does apply to everybody regardless of your immigration status. And so that protects us against search and seizure. We have the right to remain silent, and we have the right to a fair and just process. So immigrant, if an employer, if ICE is raiding a workplace, if they're able to get all the way in, people still have, immigrant workers have the right to remain silent and say, I don't want to answer questions if they're being asked, where were you born, things like that. They have a right to an interpreter to understand what's being asked of them. They have a right to ask for a lawyer. The federal government doesn't provide one like in a criminal case, but they have a right to ask for a lawyer, and a couple of things like that. So there are some level of rights, but it's hard to speak up. What's that?
They have habeas corpus as well, I think.
If habeas, habeas is a tool that people can use if they've been detained for too long with no sort of charges being brought against them. So in the immigration context, if people are detained for too long and they're not getting deported or things like that, people can bring a habeas petition in federal court to try to get released on bond and things like that. So there's some protections, but it's very scary for people in that situation.
You said that you have emergency kits for families to use in case that a family member has been taken. Are the schools organized? Do you have something? Is there any kind of training for the administrations of schools so that if they're informed that so-and-so's mother has been taken, but the school couldn't do it at the end of the day? It's official that only somebody who's been signed on by the parent can pick up a kid at school. But what if that person isn't available?
Right.
I guess when we developed the preparedness packets, when we developed those packets, it was through a charter school with a group of pro bono attorneys, and then they set out, and for example, in Central Falls, they educated administrators on how that worked, and then they connected to families and worked with families, and I think that's happening right now. So it's going to happen again. So for many of these urban communities, there's going to be a deliberate conversation with families. But still, these are hard to reach communities. So when we talk about workers' rights, etc., there's a lot of folks that don't have access to that. We are strapped, and that's another thing.
30,000 is a lot of people.
Yeah, but we are involved with a lot of critical issues in the community, and we have work that we have to do on a daily basis to help people. And so we don't have the resources to really support people who are in those circumstances, financially or otherwise. And so in many cases, these folks are really alone. And that's the reality. We can't lie to ourselves and think that we're gonna solve this, even if we get together, because we have so limited resources. And it would take a big change in our communities and our societies to make a difference. Because a lot of these folks are alone, and they may have family members, one or another, but when someone goes to prison, there's a lot of costs involved. Attorneys cost a lot of money, and some of these cases don't have hope. That means even if you have an attorney, that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to stay here. So to spend more money on top of money doesn't make sense for some of these cases. And then there are people who take advantage of these situations, and there are families that are already poor paying money for something that really has no solution. So that's really a difficult situation, and we're cognizant, at least I am cognizant, that sometimes we just feel powerless because we don't have the resources to really help families the way we would like to. And then the whole question about minors living by themselves, usually that's the option. You have minors that if they have a family friend or a friend, they will stay, but they will be alone. So that's another reality that's going to happen if if these things come to pass. And I know there was a gentleman in the back that had a question.
I just wanted to add one thing, that the family preparedness plans that Mario is talking about that were developed back in 2016, it's actual legal documents where someone is signing over temporary guardianship to a trusted adult that they know and that the children know. So we had events at schools in Central Falls, and we're going to be doing more of that. Now that it's all developed and we have the packet available, it's available on various websites, the Immigrant Coalition of Rhode Island, but it's a packet of information, and sadly, parents are, in advance signing over their rights so that a trusted adult can pick the child up from school, take them to a doctor's appointment, deal with financial matters, things like that. So it's not an emergency kit that people are being handed. This is work we have to do in advance for just the situation that you're talking about. And so we're working on preparing those events. And they actually do need a lot of volunteers. So when we have them set up, we'll send it over the airwaves.
Wow, I'm having a hard time soaking in that story about signing up your rights for your children. That's super hard to hear. I'm working organizing houses of worship to be prepared to offer sanctuary. And there's a tradition of sanctuary for houses of worship. Is that a legal tradition? Is that a norm? What is it?
Well, I don't know the history of it, but in terms of there is something called, there's an ICE memo from 2011 that's called sensitive locations. And it generally is an ICE policy that says that unless it's, a terrorist, huge public safety risk, ICE officers are not allowed to conduct enforcement at churches, hospitals, and schools. Are the primary locations. They can't go in and do that without a supervisor's approval and without, meeting these criteria of it being an emergency and things like that. And part of the reason for that is because they don't want children going uneducated, being too afraid to go to school. They don't want somebody who's very sick being too afraid to go to the hospital, and because that's not good for the community or that person. Unfortunately, there's a recent article that this is one of the policies that the second Trump administration is going to rescind. It didn't happen during Trump 1. It was not rescinded. It remained in place, and so we didn't see a lot of enforcement actions in those places, and so it was possible to hold people in sanctuary. If an undocumented family who's at risk is living in a church, I think that's what you're talking about. But I think it's the church thing in particular that is motivating, the notion of sort of people hiding on a long-term basis kind of thing that might be motivating them trying to rescind it. Again, we don't know if that, because the notion is it's being abused. People aren't going there just to worship but are living. So this is a recent announcement that we've heard that it might be rescinded. I hope not. It didn't happen the first time.
And also takes resources from them to start to make this happen. So it probably won't happen, but we really don't know. There's questions.
So, I'm Charles Ortman, and I'm the immigration person for the Rhode Island State Council of Churches. And the precedence of sanctuary goes back to prior to the 15th century, and in this country has never been violated by our government. And that doesn't mean that it won't be, but it means it hasn't been, and there's significant precedence there.
That's comforting. This woman here has.
It just on the thing that they need a search warrant, so they need the name of the person in the church to who they're going after. So if you try to keep that part down, to know who you have actually in the church, how can they get a church? It'll be harder to get a search warrant for who are they really going after, and you don't have to allow them into your church.
Hey Jeff,
Hillary Savitz, I'm with the learning community, I'm their board chair, and they did a lot of work with us last time. Hey, Sarah, and guardianship. Sarah, and I'm also with the Unitarian Church. There was a question when I asked Sarah Friedman, what do we do? And she said, get a lot of people to become notaries. And I wondered, because not all of us are lawyers, but I actually didn't ask her, why do we need, would it be, if we were notaries, would we be able to help with the guardianship work? And where would that be helpful? Because that could be something that we all apply to be notaries, and we could maybe, that was helpful, maybe that's maybe would be helpful. But what does that mean?
It just
What do you
means
think
that
she
you
was
could
suggesting?
notarize the legal documents that allowing parents to.
So if we were to help schools with guardianship paper processing, and
That
you
would
got
be
some
really
pro bono
helpful.
lawyers, but there's not that many because they're all maxed out. Having a group of us be notaries, so maybe if some of us went to be notaries, we could be helpful.
Are you gonna be a notary?
I think Chris and I are thinking.
Great.
Yeah. And that might way to be helpful as a non-lawyer if you had to do a lot of guardianship processing for your organization. So if that, maybe some of us could go do that.
That would be great. Yeah.
Okay.
Jackie?
Yeah, first I just want to say, I want to find a way to connect with so many people who are speaking tonight. I'm here representing Temple Bethel on the east side, and we're interested to meet so many of the people who have spoken tonight. My question was about you all saying there's only so much political advocacy you can do, and I'm wondering if we're doing advocacy for legislation, what legislation would you like to see pass? What is maybe already kind of potentially going to be put forward by lawmakers you know, or things you have heard kind of working already kind of in the docket, or slash what is your dream legislation that citizens could be advocating for on your behalf?
That's so hard. Oh yeah, microphone. I don't think in this case, because it's the issues are federal issues. Yeah. So they would go to our congressional staff, Senator Reid, Senator Whitehouse, Congressman Amo. So those are questions at the federal level. And I guess we're focused more on the state level and local municipality and what we could do with folks on the ground. And as you all know, on the federal level, there hasn't been any movement in terms of any new immigration policies, which we really need, because the problem is it's so antiquated. Since President Reagan, we have not had any new immigration laws passed. I think if we did have something, then we wouldn't be having this discussion today, because we would hopefully have fair laws, fair immigration policies that would address a lot of these issues. But unfortunately, we just have very antiquated laws that don't speak to the issues of today and to the numbers of people that are affected.
I just want to add one thing, everything that Mario said, at the Rhode Island level, we're not going to impact the federal immigration laws. There have been some Rhode Island things that we as a state have done recently that have been fabulous, which is the driving privilege cards, so it's driver's license for all, and Medicaid coverage, cover all kids it was called, so regardless of your immigration status, you could get a driver's license or a driving privilege card, and kids can get covered by Medicaid. So the Immigrant Coalition meets on a monthly basis and has a policy working group, so we're in the works of developing the wish list for the next legislation. But in terms at the federal level, one thing that would be great would be the DREAM Act to deal with the DACA situation. This country has never been able to pass the DREAM Act, but as Mario said, there has been no major immigration legislation in years and years and years. It's sadly one of the most divisive issues in this country. But the DREAM Act would be fabulous to solve, to try to solve the situation for the DACA kids who are now all adults.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Meg, and I work with an arts organization in Olneyville, so we work with primarily an immigrant community and families, and I wanted to know on behalf of our organization and then all of us, if we wanted to bring y'all in or other groups to do a Know Your Rights presentation, because we have so many families who are comfortable coming to our clubhouse. We would host it. How can groups like us become more of a grassroots, effort to get the wonderful important work you're doing into more people's homes?
Yeah, so as you said that you're in Olneyville, so there's a great organization in Olneyville called ONA.
Yeah.
We
know them well.
Yeah. So we as Fuerza Laboral, we have given many people that live in Olneyville and like the population that ONA receives and works with basic labor rights, because you have some labor rights depending on whatever your legal status is. I know ONA as well also brings people for like Know Your Rights, immigration, and all of that. So like we can continue that collaboration. Education is one part, right? You want to give immigrant families all of the education that you want, but as much you want to get involved with us, you will get involved with you. So like just get to us and also listen to the families and what they see. And sometimes the people will ask for very simple things like, oh, I need to work more. But then you have to go the extra level because you've been here in this meeting and you know that the issues run deeper and are more difficult than that. So just help in whatever way that you find, and you can talk to us at whatever moment, and we can start making plans, projects, trainings, whatever.
There are lots of the Immigrant Coalition of Rhode Island, which all of us are a part of. There is now finally a coordinator again, and the website is getting ramped up. And I'm pretty sure there's a link to request a Know Your Rights event if you want that. So so if you go to that website, we're trying to sort of funnel all of the requests, but we're all happy to come to your organizations and do Know Your Rights presentations if you have a community of people that are interested.
I will also add that as legislation changes, the Immigrant Coalition and us as different nonprofit organizations that work with immigrants, as immigration changes, we will know what changed, and we will try to also give trainings on what has changed. For example, when there were driver permits, which are not driver licenses, but driver permits for people without legal immigration status, we as the immigration, we give a lot of training on how to get one, what is the training, what you should be careful about, etc., etc. Same happened with Medicaid for children. So as new things change, the coalition, like the Immigration Coalition, will prepare also material for the people involved.
Another question? Oh, again.
Sorry. There is one federal legislation that it's not directly immigration, but it bears on it. It's this attempt to allow the IRS to unilaterally get rid of your 501c3 status. It's I can't remember the name. They gave it a name that makes it very hard to oppose. But it needs to be. Yeah, they put anti-terrorism in there to scare us off. But the Rhode Island State Council of Churches has taken some lead on this, but it's another way to intimidate nonprofits to keep us out of this work. So our reps did vote against it. Yeah. And my question that goes after the statement is, in terms of information sharing, I know that Rhode Island State Police and municipalities are not cooperating with ICE. Are they sharing information? Does that mean no sharing of information?
That's a good question. I've been doing a lot of reading about this recently to understand better. There's two different concepts. There's something called secure communities, which is where the information sharing comes from. In general, when someone's arrested by the police and they're fingerprinted, the local authorities who fingerprint them run the fingerprints through the FBI to see if there are warrants in other states or if someone has a criminal record of any sort that would impact the current arrest. At some point, I can't remember when this started, but I think it was actually during the Reagan, no, it was during Bush. It was started, I think, by Bush, and then Obama actually expanded it, the secure communities. So that information sharing is pretty much automatic because it's just fingerprints getting sent to the FBI and then the FBI sending them on to the Department of Homeland Security to run it through the biometrics identification systems that the Department of Homeland Security has. So that kind of information sharing, which is automatic, and I don't think people have the ability to opt out of that fingerprints being automatically sent. But I think the thing that people are not cooperating with is sort of the second step of that. So if someone's prints are taken, it goes to the FBI, it goes to the Department of Homeland Security, and they take a look and decide it's somebody that they might want to detain and put into removal proceedings. They do something called issue a detainer. And that is a document that would let the local jail or court or whoever, the police department or the ACI, let's say in Rhode Island, let them know that we, ICE, are interested in this person, so please give us 48 hours notice when the person is to be released, and or hold the person for up to 48 hours after they're supposed to be released so that we can come and pick them up. That's the part that's my understanding is not mandatory, and that's the part where the quote-unquote sanctuary cities are not participating and holding and either giving notice or holding people for extra time. And they're not holding people for extra time for a couple reasons. One, because it's very expensive, and two, because there are Supreme Court cases and other things that say how that violates somebody's rights. If they've served their sentence, the criminal sentence that they're serving, and they're free to leave and they're being held, for no reason yet. So there's an issue of, are they legally allowed to keep holding people in custody, and what kind of rights does that violate? It's also very expensive. It's anti-immigrant. It ruins, relationships between police departments and the community. So I think the information piece we don't have control of, but I'm interested to hear from the police chiefs, and mayors about that in Rhode Island to learn a little bit more.
Okay. We have time for one more question.
Just to add on what he was asking, I was about to ask the same question. I'm B. Stewart from the United African Women of Rhode Island Association, and my question was the same question that he had, but with regards to the banks. I understand that when you open a bank account, that's another thing. They do ask you for your immigration status. So how secure is our information? Sharing information, sharing banks too. I know Bank of America does.
So from my understanding is that some banks will let you open savings accounts and checking accounts without you having to have a social security number. So this counts not only for people who are immigrants, but also tourists, or like people that are just like going through the country, right? So that part of banks sharing information, I will not see why ICE or other like federal administration will be asking banks for information. So I really don't know, but I do know that certain banks, including Bank of America, would let you open bank accounts without asking you for a social security number. I think you have to have an IT number. IT number is a tax number that you have that you can pay taxes with it, but it doesn't mean that you have a social security number. So in that way, you can give services as a contractor, as an independent contractor, and pay taxes from that. that number is it's the way of many people who work in this country without without a work permit, in order for them to, in a way, work legally and pay taxes, because big part of the population that doesn't have immigration status still pay taxes, and pay big taxes as well, because they have to pay taxes as independent contractors. Now, coming back to what the gentleman there said about organizations possibly being named as terrorist organizations. As we know, people that are called terrorists depends on who is calling you terrorist, right? So, for example, LGBTQ organizations or trans rights organizations could be called terrorists just because they don't go with Republican morals, right? Same could happen, for example, to us, to Fuerza Laboral, especially because we do organizing. We want people to know the rights and act on the rights and have the power in community to make, for example, direct action towards employers, direct action towards politicians, right? Organizing and protesting. So if that changes, for example, my organization could be in danger, because part of our mission is organizing. Therefore, us and I know other organizations of the Immigrant Coalition, we would have to start being very careful on how we give information and how we organize trainings, etc., etc., etc. For example, if things get too bad, which we hope it doesn't get that bad, we will have to give, and I'm talking about like the Immigrant Coalition, not only Fuerza Laboral, we will have to give information about how to navigate this country as an immigrant, but we will have to give this training another name. You know, we will have to like mask and start to navigate. That is if it becomes too bad, but it is also a topic that concerns us all, like almost directly. But
I mean,
as we say, we don't know.
If the churches and temples of this state are called terrorist organizations, and we all sit at home in terror and don't march in the streets, then we're all brain dead. So bring it on. All our churches and temples terrorist organizations, and let's wake up and fight our guns. That would be pathetic and be like a mouse.
I think while we don't have ice coming
We love that energy right
there. Well, we don't have ice coming in here to round us up. We have Mary Francis from the League who is going to, there is some kind of survey to see what people think. And I do urge people, this yellow slip has the email and the websites of the three organizations. So please consider this evening a spur to get involved in 2025, a new Year's resolution. Thank you on behalf of the listeners.
I want to thank our panelists were just wonderful, and I hope you all appreciated learning about their organizations as much as I did. Because, you know, there's so much good work going on, and some of you spoke to that as well. And we all don't always know what's happening in our own community, and opportunities like this are so helpful. My name is Mary Frances Cooper, by the way, and I'm with the Providence League of Women Voters. The other thing I want to say is what we heard tonight, we don't know what's going to happen, but we all have to stay aware. And you know, we have these websites. We also heard about the Immigrant Coalition, which you can Google and find out as well. Keep an eye on these things, because if there's an opportunity to step up, we want to be there and we want to help. You will get an email survey.
Yeah, there will be an email coming out for the registration. There's a link in there to a survey. So
actually, I already got it. So please respond to the survey. It's really helpful to us. We partner with Live It House a lot, and we like to do a forum such as this. So thank you so much for coming. Thank our panelists.
One more head so they
Great.